Welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, hanging out inside of where sports meets life. Appreciate you being here with us every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And I am honored and privileged, as always, to be your 24/7 exclusive multimedia marketing partner of the LeMoyne College Dolphins. We have the opportunity to feature those Dolphins all throughout the year. And of course, on Wednesdays, we bring you Dolphin Time, first and third Wednesday of each month, AD and DT, with Athletics Director Bob Beretta and myself, Dan Tortora. And every second and fourth Wednesday, we bring you the Dolphin Dive, diving into stories of student athletes, coaches, administration, future Dolphins, and alumni. And of course, under promise, over deliver, we have brought you many specials over these many months that we've been with the Dolphins, now in year 3, and it is always a blessing for me to have the opportunity to spotlight the terrific people on the heights that make it what it is. So in just a moment, here on MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin', we'll be featuring Robin Wheeless, the head coach of the men's and women's cross country and track and field teams. Cross country is in full effect right now, and they have an event coming up this weekend. So we'll get into this first Division I season for men's and women's cross country with Robin Wheeless momentarily, and then we'll round out hour number 1 speaking on the State of Syracuse Football, following a game that definitely seems to have shown a divide of where Syracuse is and where some other teams in the conference are as well. So we'll talk about that to round out the first hour. And then in hour number 2, we'll have a new video, as on Wednesdays we split our broadcast into 2 separate videos for fantasy football, and you'll see fantasy football in focus with every single NFL team in action being spoken about coming up in hour number 2. So with that being said, picture in picture with me here this morning, Robin Wheeless, the head coach of the men's and women's cross country and track and field teams. Speaking on cross, and we're in our first Division I season. Robin, how are you?
Good. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. And Robin, I mean, you and I were talking off the air here and starting a few minutes back here because we were having the conversation that kind of leads into the conversation that we're going to have this morning. Just what you've seen so far in this Division I world, how you've taken it as a head coach, any challenges, any thoughts up to this point?
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, we've always competed against some Division I schools, but certainly we've had to raise our game as far as the competition we're seeking out. Last weekend, we were out at Lehigh, Pennsylvania, to a huge Division I meet. It had 3 meets with over 40 teams in each, and some of the top Division I schools in the country were there. And it's certainly humbling for us, but it's the sort of thing, it shows us what we could be, what we should aspire to be. So it's there's a lot of talent out there, and we have a lot of work to do. So we're looking to get better every year, but it's going to be a journey.
And when you talk about the level of competition that you've gone up against, when you look back and reflect upon the season so far and the Frank Dillon Memorial Invitational, as well as the Yellow Jacket, the Paul Short, what type of, when you talk about the level of competition, what schools are we talking about? What teams are we discussing here when you're speaking on that level of competition that's high?
Well, I mean, teams that were there at Paul Short, they were from all over the country. I mean, North Dakota down to teams coming out of Florida. It was, but honestly, some of the better teams are in the Northeast. So cross country is traditionally very strong in the central New York area. And my hope is we can keep bringing in talent from the central New York area and expand our reach a little bit because of being D1.
And you talk about that, like expanding your reach and the talent, a lot of good talent being up here. When you're recruiting, have you had to change anything? Have you had to adjust anything or look elsewhere, or does your recruiting model stay the same as when this was a Division II institution?
Um, I would say we're looking for another level of talent. We need to seek a higher level. But one of the main things we need to maintain and focus on in our sales pitch is more of the talk about just because we're Division I, we're still an excellent academic school, and academics are going to be a focus.
Yeah.
People are afraid once you say we're going Division I that we forget about, I have kids who have, gone on to medical school. I have kids who have gone on to be lawyers. It's, it's not the sort of thing where we're going to be practicing 40 hours a week. The NCAA limit is 20 hours a week, and we stay well away from that. We get our work done when when we're together. And my hope is when they're not with me, they're doing a lot of studying.
And like you said, that's something that other coaches have spoken to me about, is this concern, right? That there's going to be this influx of practice time, and it's going to take away from scholastics, and it's going to be a totally different experience now that it's Division I. Have you had to dispel that a lot, to kind of go a little bit deeper into it and let people know, hey, listen, this is still LeMoyne. Yes, we're Division I, but it's not going to be this crazy adjustment, because I feel like that's the thing that's come up with a bunch of coaches, is that student athletes had this fear of like, okay, I'm going to be practicing all day and I'm not going to have time for anything else.
That's always a focus of our discussions with the prospective students, and especially with their parents. They don't want to um, come to school just to be an athlete. They want to be a student as well. And we have kids coming who want to go into our PA program. They want to go on to be physical therapists, or, they're in the business program and they want to be able to go on for their MBA. It's, we don't want mediocre students. Our team GPA is almost always going to be over a 3.4, and that's a source of pride for us. And we're not going to let that go.
That coming here from Robin Wheeless, the head coach of the men's and women's cross country and track and field teams. Switching to Division I for you, Robin, overseeing men's cross country, women's cross country, men's track and field, women's track and field. When you have essentially 4 teams under what you do and under your leadership and tutelage, with the transition, has it been more for you and different for you in any way? Because we've seen it, Division II and Division III, that there are coaches that'll take over numerous programs like that, like men's and women's cross country and track and field. But has it changed anything for you overseeing all these teams now in Division I?
Well, it does seem like there's a lot more work as far as the paperwork. The actual coaching duties haven't changed, but what has to happen outside of that has really gone up quite a bit. There's other programs will have, they'll have one person who just does the paperwork, and that leaves the coaching to the coaches.
Yeah.
But we're on a smaller scale, and that's okay with me. I've got a terrific assistant, and she does a fantastic job. Smaller scale, and that's okay. She takes care of a lot of the events that I used to have to do myself. So it's
So when you have that, like you said, you're on a smaller scale. Is this something you want to operate under for a while? Do you want to take this scale and kind of grow it, blossom it, and move it forward? How do you look at the scale of what this program is currently and what you would like it to be in Division One? Are you going to start expanding and operating differently, or do you want to keep things more status quo?
Well, right now we have the two of us coaching, and we have a few volunteer coaches. I think I would like to, and I think the school agrees with me that we're going to be expanding as the team expands. So we may at some point add another assistant coach. Um, in my grand vision, I would like to see our team grow considerably, and we add a couple more coaches. But our team right now is small and close knit, and the trick will be I don't want to lose that feel
Yeah.
where we really have a group that looks out for each other and supports each other. The upperclassmen, it's practically having a built-in tutor for some of the underclassmen, and that's invaluable.
So, like you said, you want to, continue to build out and you'd like to expand. And when you expand, you want to have at least one other coach because, as you expand, you want to still have that experience for the student athlete, I'd imagine, where they feel that they can go to a coach and have that time, that quality time. And as you continue to grow, if you were to add two more coaches, like you said, where is the roster now, in your opinion, to where you want it to be? If you're looking at recruiting and you're looking at the future, what percentage increase are we looking at here? Do you kind of have a plan of this is where I'm at? I have X, now I want Y. Do you have some of those numbers and some of those thoughts kind of already there for you for the future in recruiting?
Yeah, right now we're in the upper 40s as far as our team size, and that's men and women combined. I'd like to see us increase the women's size to probably be closer to 35 next year, and um, so get us closer to 60 to 65 next year. That's a it's a BHAG, a big audacious hairy goal, but
Yeah,
it's but that's where I'd like to be, and see it go even farther after that. You know,
big audacious hairy goal. Where did that come from? I like that.
that was from one of my old places of employment. I was an engineer with Census Corporation for many years, and they wanted us to strive for big things.
Yeah, and when you are striving for big things, one of the things I want to talk about before I let you go here in this Dolphin Dive on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora with Robin Wheeless, the head coach of men's and women's cross country and track and field, and of course cross country in season right now in their first Division One season. You and I were speaking off the air about Olympic sports, about the lack of coverage, about the lack of respect. In my opinion, we're seeing Division One conferences expand, and you're in the NEC, and the NEC is trying to stay within the Northeast. They are the Northeast Conference. They're trying to obviously respect that model. They have a lot of associate members that come in as well. When we look at some of the other conferences around the country, we see that the Big Ten is going to have 2,500 miles between some teams, 2,400 miles. I believe the Big 12 is going to have somewhere around 2,700 miles, and now the ACC will have 2,800 plus miles between Syracuse and Cal, for example. These moves, people always said things were driven by football. And if they're not driven by football, they're driven by basketball. And if they're not driven by one, they're driven by both. Cross country and Olympic sports in general, it doesn't seem like people are asking those student athletes, how do you feel? What do you want? What works for you? And I keep asking myself, are they going to charter plane a cross country team from Penn State? I don't think so. Are they going to try and save money and say, hey, we spent all this on football, so we're going to bus our cross country team and take 2 days out of the schedule. Our team's going to, have to go on a train. I mean, what are they going to do in this respect? Because there's this thought process that, oh, these bigger schools, they're going to send them all on planes. They're not going to charter them, but they'll send them all in coach, but they're going to send them on planes. And you're talking about 40 members. You're talking about filling up an entire plane. I'm thinking in my head, the way that Olympic sports have been treated, this isn't right, but I feel like they're going to try to move them on the ground, and it's going to take a lot of time. Where are we right now in Division I collegiate athletics, and why is there not a voice for Olympic sports?
Well, I will say it isn't the same across all teams and all regions.
Yeah.
I think we're very well supported. The having to go Division I, we have to travel a bit more, and we're lucky enough that we can still do everything on, within a reasonable distance drive.
Yeah.
Schools like SU, where that's a much bigger budget. And I was amazed to know that, their women's cross country and track and field team, their budget is over $1 million, which amazes me. Football certainly is more, and they have a lot more resources, but to a certain extent, all of our sports are very well taken care of. We have our difficulties without having a track and that sort of thing. Facilities will come eventually, I hope. I hope sooner rather than later, but the smaller sports aren't really going to be the ones that drive a need for name, image, likeness, and that sort of thing. And we're going along for the ride with all of the other larger sports that have more fan appeal. And not that our fans aren't loyal and supportive, but we don't have the TV time that, being on ESPN would generate. So it's a challenge for us to compete at that next level, but I think at the level we're at now in Division I think we can compete very well.
Yeah, and you bring up a bunch of different things there, but exposure. So you and I have spoken over these last couple of years, and now here in year 3 in my partnership with LeMoyne. What would you like to spotlight and focus on? For our conversations that we have, like we have this here today, what do you feel like we should be talking about with cross country? What do you think should be the focus? Because you're in it every single day. And I feel like if you want to get to know something and you want to understand something or a need that something has, you go to the source. So where should our focus be?
Well, I would love for our sport in general. There are isolated cases where cross country does get exposure. You can watch the nationals, live on the computer. It's a lot trickier than covering a football game or a basketball game where you put cameras in a specific location, but it's really exciting to watch a cross country race unfold, but you have to have cameras on the move the whole time. And it helps to have commentators that are familiar with the sport. And that only happens a few times a year for cross country. Whereas, the other sports, they have, let's face it, almost every school has its own commentators that that are very familiar with basketball. Um, but a lot of times, even on national coverage for a track and field meet, you won't have a knowledgeable commentator. It's gotten better over the years, but I was lucky enough for work to travel in Europe a bit, and over there you can watch a track and field meet, you know, practically every day on TV, and it's it's a much different experience when um, they're they're used to covering track, they're used to handling the track meet, and it's the sort of thing where it would be difficult to develop a marketplace here, but um, watching good track and field on TV is a lot more exciting than watching golf.
Yeah, and you do. I mean, you discuss obviously, like you said, in different places having that exposure, but needing someone who's knowledgeable. And that, I mean, my career started in commentating, and it took me 2 years to find somebody that could sit in the seat next to me. That number one was reliable, responsible, but that knew what they were talking about. That's it's frustrating beyond belief to me to watch something. I'm sure it is for you too, where someone's commentating and you're like, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. And you want, if you're gonna do it, because I think in some cases it's like, hey, let's just put it out there. As long as we have somebody out there to run the camera and somebody to talk about this. But I feel like you have to have a passion for it. You have to have a love for it. You have to have a connection to it. So before we close up today for this edition of Dolphin Dive on Wake Up Call, your passion, your love, we've discussed it before. How does that grow, Robin? How do you look at a situation like this and say, I've been connected to this sport for so many years, and now we're moving to Division One, and there's going to be a challenge, but I want that challenge. I accept that. I want there to be more exposure. I want there to be commentating. I want there to be cameras that are going to be able to capture our cross-country meets. I want to come up with creative ideas and opportunities. I want to make sure that we expand in this respect. I want to find the right assistant or assistants that are going to help me grow. Why are you passionate to do all of these things now that there is adversity, now that there is a task that's different from former years? Some people run away from that stuff. You ran at it. So, I mean, I guess it makes sense across country, right? To run towards something. Why are you doing what you're doing right now?
Well, like you said, there's a challenge. You don't do things because they're easy. You do them because they're hard. It's you always want to see, how good can you be at something? What can you take something to? Um, I don't want to be the person that retires and just, sits and watches TV all day. I want to know at the end of this year I've accomplished something. I've worked with kids and made their lives better, or changed them for the future and prepared them for life. It's you know track isn't a sport where people are going to make a ton of money at. That there's the number of people who make a real living at running compared to other sports is minuscule, and the number of people who make money at any sports compared to the population is minuscule. So we better be doing sports to get ready for life, and I think it's the best way to prepare kids to be good citizens and raise the family correctly.
Final note here going off of that. How does cross country and track and field, in your opinion, how does that prepare your student athletes for life? What do you do to help them be ready for what is beyond their sport?
Well, a lot of times I like to point out the fact that um, right now we don't have huge crowds in the stands, especially when you're talking at a cross country meet. It's you are practicing and participating in large part in a vacuum. You're doing hard work. You're putting in, days, weeks, and months worth of work for your own goals. And learning to that discipline and the dedication to your teammates and to your craft are something you can apply to school and to work after that. It's, the whole idea of, I know in this day and age, a mental health day is a thing, but when you're a parent, it isn't a thing.
Yeah.
It's, there is no, I've got to step aside, you know, I'm going to, I'm just going to let you guys be for this week. It's, it's a demanding job. And if you're prepared for that, you're prepared for any job in the world.
That coming here from Robin Wheeless, the head coach of the men's and women's cross country and track and field teams, cross country in their first Division I season. Robin, as always, I appreciate the conversation that goes beyond the sport into life. That's exactly what Wake Up Call is about and has been about, where sports meets life. I hope when we saw you out on the track, or on your track last week when you were on Ted Grant Field and taking that up and having that opportunity, I hope that they got something out of that fantastic weather that we've been having. Hopefully weather will be generous to you. And speaking of weather, I hear that you're not too bad at golf, right? I mean, have we improved? Because you and I met at the links, right? We saw each other at Tuscarora a couple months back. Are we seeing a better golfer blossom in the reality of Robin Wheeless?
I don't know that I'll golf enough for a few years to get too good. Captain and crew is perfect for me because I I swing from the heels with everything I've got, and sometimes it goes straight.
Yeah, I always tell people, captain and crew, I'm your closer. I'm your Mariano Rivera. Just get me to the green, and I'll shut it down from there. But yeah, captain and crew, I think I agree with you. That's the right way to go. So with that being said, Robin Wheeless giving a spotlight to cross country and to track and field as well in this first cross country season for LeMoyne, and making sure those Olympic sports get the love that they deserve. Robin, as always, thank you for your time. I appreciate it tremendously, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Take care. That coming once again from Robin Wheeless here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of Dolphin Dive, where sports meets that thing called life, in our exclusive multimedia marketing partnership with the LeMoyne College Dolphins. Moments like that are extremely important to me because not only do I love covering LeMoyne, but I've always loved this. And my dad told me this a long time ago. He said, you can do whatever you want, son. I was trying to figure out what social ministry I wanted to be connected to, and there was a bunch of different things that I could choose in college and with campus ministry. And my dad said, well, I want you to look at the list, because I was telling my dad, there's a bunch of things that I like. I like this one. This one seems like, this one needs a lot of help. It's like a program that has only a couple people involved. These programs seem to be doing good. And he said, well, son, you could do whatever you want to do. And if you went to a program that was already successful and already doing well, I'm sure you would continue to help it to do well. But he's like, that's not my son. My son is the one who goes to the program that's dying and you give it life. And so to me, he was like, don't waste your talents on something that's already moving. Put your talents into the things that need help to move. And when it comes to giving LeMoyne exposure and opportunities, that's an honor for me. When it comes to Olympic sports in general, that's an honor for me. I mean, we've covered cross country, track and field, and tennis, volleyball. I'm going through everything: softball, baseball, lacrosse, swimming and diving. I mean, you name it, we put it out there. When you look at everything we've done, we just added in equestrian and had the opportunity to speak about that with Alfred University. I mean, the sports that we've covered, bowling, crew, it's not just basketball and football, right? Soccer, of course, that we've covered here. But it's a passion of mine. It's a love of mine. It's a desire of mine to make sure that everybody has a voice. Being a voice to the voiceless, being a voice to the people that have a voice, but making that voice louder. you know? To me, we should strive. Golf as well. We just spoke about golf. We've had golf here. Tesori is awesome. I love talking with Joe Tesori for men's and women's golf at LeMoyne. And, you know, for the reality of the world that we live in, yes, I love the sport of basketball. Yes, I love the sport of football. But I also have a passion for these other sports, and this passion for these other sports have come from the coaches and the student athletes. They've made me passionate because they're passionate, and it's contagious, and I feed off of that energy. And so, you know, Robin's one of those people where I really genuinely appreciate his time, and I appreciate the work that he's doing, and I appreciate when I said to him, why do you do this? Like, you could have just left. You could have been like, all right, they're going Division I. I'm not going to go through all this stuff. I did what I did at Division II. I'll see you later. And he said, because he wants to wake up and do something with his life. He wants to be challenged. Some of us want to be challenged. And that might sound foreign and crazy to people, but some of us like being challenged, you know? I talk about that all the time. Yeah, there's a certain thing where you say, okay, I can't put any more work on my plate because I don't because I physically am a human being and I need to sleep, or I need to be able to take breaks. I need to take care of my dog. I have to be able to travel. I got to be able to do this and that. So, you know, there's certain things that you have to say to yourself, but I always try to find a way to push the limit because I am invigorated by the opportunity to help somebody. So when I come up with an idea, I want to go to the next idea and the next idea and the next idea. Not because I'm driven by money, not because I'm driven by notoriety and people chanting my name or being like, oh my God, Dan, I love you. Not by any of that stuff. I'm driven by God gave me this one life and I love creating. I love it. If I was working on movies right now, every single day, I'd be like, all right, let's do this. Let's work on this movie. Let's get, like, if I'm on a movie, I'm in the movie. If we're sitting there pitching ideas, I'm like, what about this? What about this? What about this? I like the challenge of 40 people at a table coming up with no ideas and me being the person that brings that idea to the table and says, what if we do this? What if we try this? What if we look at it from this angle? That's fun for me. Some people run into the storm. Some people run away from it. The reality of it all is the storm is coming, and it comes no matter what, right? The storm comes no matter what. So you can run away from it or you can run toward it, but the reality of it all is it's going to be there. And do you use the storm to your advantage? Do you try to get into the eye of the tornado where it is calm? Or do you just let this thing spin around about you and hope that it doesn't hit your house? You know, to me, you try to put a lasso around the chaos and ride it to the best of your ability. And I love when I talk with coaches and student athletes and people in general, business owners, that are like, hey, give me the challenge. I want the challenge. I like the challenge. I mean, the businesses that I've worked with that are up here on our partnership page, they navigated through COVID. Carvel found a way. Mon Paz found a way. The Wildcat found a way. I discovered their fried dough. I had been going there for years, never got their fried dough, and I discovered that during COVID, going there with my mom. GG Cards and Brakes, navigated through it. Great Lakes Honda City. There was a time where you couldn't get cars. And here's Honda City, navigating through it. Mother's Cupboard, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Chick-fil-A Clay, 317 at Montgomery Street. Avicoli's, PB&J's Lunchbox. Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, a place for your dog during COVID, still trying to help people out. Pizza Man. Everybody found a way because they ran into the storm. LeMoyne, Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse, Alfred University. They ran into the storm. And those are the partners that I want to have. Those are the people that I want to have on this show. Those are the conversations that I want you to be able to listen to, because Wake Up Call is essentially sitting on the couch with me and whoever my guests are. That's what this show is all about. This show is the feel of sitting on a couch, hanging out, talking about stuff that's important to us. And anybody that doesn't get it isn't listening, you know? And I just really genuinely have grown more and more of a love for Olympic sports because I'm around them more and more over the years. And I'm spending this time with these student athletes and these coaches that are so passionate that you can't help but want them to win. And instead of being like, oh, I hope somebody helps you out, it's like, well, why can't I do it? Right? We get 2 people to listen this morning, 100 people to listen this morning, 1,000 people to listen this morning. Well, then that's good for cross country. It's good for LeMoyne. It's good for Robin. It's good for the student athletes. It's good to let them know that they're heard, they're seen, they matter. You know, everybody's trying to write a story. And if you can put more eyes on that story, to me, that's a beautiful thing, right? When you meet that person that says, I want to publish it, I want to talk about it, I want to spotlight it, that's awesome. And LeMoyne's been great about telling their stories here on Wake Up Call, and I appreciate it tremendously because I'm just trying to do God's work, right? Just trying to bring people together, spread positivity, talk about the good in our community and beyond. So with that being said, we're going to take a step aside for a fast break here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. When I come back, you see that helmet. We're going to talk about the State of Syracuse Football. I asked y'all how you were feeling. I'm going to read your comments after this. Some of y'all, let me put it to you like this. Y'all don't mince words. I'll tell you that much. We'll talk about it after this.
Hi, this is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the whole frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory remind us that every day is worth celebrating. Find them at 201 Old 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Open Monday through Saturday in-store and all the time online at maandpaspopcorn.com. Serving our Central New York community and beyond, you can order all throughout the country at maandpaspopcorn.com. And remember to get your tins, which have in-store half-price refills forever. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, available to you for fundraising and all of your events by calling 315-450-6272. That's 315-450-6272. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you?
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. We appreciate you being here every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And, of course, now inside of maandpaspopcorn.com's What's Poppin', it's time to jump into our Syracuse football coverage and the state of Syracuse football. So let's get into that State of Syracuse football talk. I asked y'all to give me your thoughts, and you guys did not mince your words. Like I said before, you definitely have no problem saying how you feel about it. And so we're going to get into some of these comments that have come into me on the Syracuse football, State of Syracuse football. So let's jump into that right now and take a look at what some of you were saying. Now, I put this question up in a couple different places, and so I'm going to read some comments here that have come through about where you think things are in the world of Syracuse football. And once again, I definitely appreciate you coming in here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora and sharing your thoughts as always. And we always tell people all the time, feel free to share your thoughts and put everything out there, and do it respectfully. And I feel like a bunch of people can do that. Some people struggle to do that, but I appreciate when people can be respectful about their thoughts and their opinions and what's going on. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into some of these responses that I got. I said, what are your thoughts following the loss on the road to the Tar Heels? Coming basically where the team is at. And we got a bunch of comments here. And so one person shared a soccer score. Greg said, I don't want to say. Greg said, I do not want to say how I feel after the 40-7 loss to North Carolina. David H. said, joke of a game like last week. Happened last year. Started undefeated until we got beat by Clemson. And Dennis said, we just played two clearly superior teams. No mystery. Michael responded and said, I get it that Clemson and North Carolina are better teams, but in both cases, we got an early bad break, the fumble last week, and the bad call on the blocked punt against North Carolina. Instead of fighting back at least a little, they just quit. And then it doesn't help when Babers makes his bad decision. The 57-yard field goal and the punt went down big, which both led to opponents' touchdowns. Other teams will use this as a blueprint. And then Tim S. said that this is what it is with Dino as head coach. Very rarely, if ever, can we play up to competition, especially on the road. Jeff said no comment. Dave S. said second-tier team. Seminoles next. Ouch. Steve W. said when next season's schedule comes out, look for the Clemson game. Then don't bother watching after that. It will free up tons of precious time. That's mean. Mary, and for Steve to know, Syracuse will not play Clemson every year now. They only play Clemson. Well, this is how it works. So they play Clemson either at home or on the road. They play the 3-5-5. So they play 3 permanent opponents in the ACC. Then of the 10 remaining, they play half of them, the 5. And then the next season, they play the other 5. And then the 5 they played in that first season, they play those teams again, either home or away, the opposite of what it was in let's call it year 1. So 2023 is year 1, and you play 5 ACC teams. In year 2, you play the other 5. In year 3, you play the ones you played in year 1, but the homes are away and the aways are home. And then the same thing in year 4, you play the teams you played in year 2. If you were at North Carolina, then North Carolina will be at Syracuse. That's essentially what it looks like in the 3-5-5. So Syracuse won't be playing Clemson every year, which is a good thing. They will be playing Florida State, though. Steve W. said, when next season's schedule comes out, look for the Clemson game. Okay, we said that. Mary K. said, we are just a terrible team with a terrible coach and no depth, passion, or discipline. We are great against lesser opponents, but cannot compete consistently against any ACC opponents. And then we had a response there from Brian, said, well, I just watched Jawar Jordan Jr., former SU running back, run 45 yards for a touchdown against Notre Dame. And Jawar Jordan's one of those guys that got away again. And Brady said, miss playing cupcakes. Dennis came back. Dennis G said, I thought we might score more than seven points, but after seeing North Carolina, I just realized we aren't at that level. Nothing to be embarrassed about. So basically saying, hey, we're not at the same level as North Carolina. Don't be embarrassed. So, and then Dan, which I can understand the statement, Dan H said, the fact that we aren't at that level is embarrassing. Mike W said, we have a right to be disappointed about all the mistakes and passive approach. We also played a superior team, not afraid to say it. They're legit, and they're just physically pushed us around. The thing is, though, I mean, when you say, like, hey, we just played a better team, you don't want to keep saying that, right? You want to be the better team. You want to be the team that can go up against the best of the best. You don't want to say, like, well, they're in a different world than we are. They're a different level than we are. Because they are a different level than Syracuse is right now. I mean, that is true. That is the case. This is a different level. North Carolina is on a different level than Syracuse is, but that's not something that as a coach, I would not go in there and be like, hey, these guys are better than us. They're on a higher level than we are. That's just reality. That is horrible. That's like admitting, like, hey, we're not as good as other teams. So let's just accept that going in. Like, if we win, it'll be a complete fluke. And I'm not saying that Dino said that at all. I'm just saying I would not say that. I would not go in and be like, hey, this team is way better than we are. Let's just go out and see what happens. That's ridiculous. You shouldn't play the game if you feel that way. Marianne A. said, it's always tough to win on the road, but I'll make my judgment after their next home game. That's what she said. And then Fred wants to fire the head coach. Joel B., said, I'm verklempt. No game plan by Babers, no second game plan for when the first game plan doesn't work. I have to say what has happened before. May not win another game this year. I've been a Cuse fan for life. Time for a new direction with a new coach. Dan H. came back and said a lot here. Said, we looked overmatched and completely unprepared, overwhelmed in every aspect of the game. But this was easy to see coming. Sitting at 4-0, there was absolutely no evidence that we could compete with even a marginally good team. Make no mistake, North Carolina is not a great football team. Neither is Clemson. So I don't know if I agree with that, Dan. I think North Carolina might be going places this year. Clemson is not what they have been. I will say that. We might pull a couple wins out of the hat against weak competition, and man, I hope we do. But the season is on the brink of a very sad repeat of last year if Dino can't figure out how to motivate and get these guys to execute. And maybe not throw in the towel by punting when we still have a puncher's chance to get back in the game. It's sad that the university is seriously asking the fan base to be satisfied with, quote, good enough to beat the bad teams, but absolutely exposed by any opponent with the slightest talent and depth, end quote. I feel like there's not a lot of hope, and that's really tough for me to say. Bleed orange. Is it hoop season yet, is what he wrote here. So Chuck B. replied, I disagree. I think North Carolina is a very good team with maybe the best quarterback in the country. Next week is going to be difficult too, but after that, each game is winnable. We did get some bad breaks the last couple of weeks, but good teams overcome those. That's where we have to get to. We can still have a very good season. Dan said, as I said, I think and hope we can pull off another couple wins. And while I want us to win as many as possible, would that really be a good season? I mean, sure, it beats losing, but we're not competing for conference championships, let alone anything beyond that. That's the long-term expectation I have of this program. Then again, I'm an 88 grad and was seriously spoiled by truly competitive teams. Amen. Chuck B. said, I'm a little older. My first game was Jim Brown's last at SU. So I went through my great teams and yours. We've been to the top and can get there again. It hurts during the rebuilding. I want another run of good, great teams before I'm done. And Chuck, if we're calling this rebuilding, it's been a rebuild for 2 decades. Dan said, I'm very skeptical that we're on the right path to get back to the top. I think our current path can only lead us to continued low-level mediocrity. I believe that Syracuse is in a limitation thing right now. I do believe that. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. And I do believe Syracuse is limited. And I don't just put it on Dino. I think that the model that Syracuse has is get to a bowl game. And that's atrocious, in my opinion, because I grew up on teams that were performing far better as well. Joe S. said, bye-bye, Dino. This is looking like last season post-Clemson loss. Unfortunately, hopefully they can prove me wrong. Carl G. said, should have fired Dino when we learned he couldn't understand the clock. Joe T. said, college football sucks. Literally the worst college sport out there. Okay. That's interesting. Patty G. said, just my personal suspicions, but I think Schrader hurt his arm on one of those sacks last week, talking about the Clemson game, and said a whole team played like they could have used a shot of 2 or of espresso today. And Dennis said that he believes that he does agree and believes that Garrett is injured. Thomas M responded and said, exactly the same scenario as last year. He gets hammered and tries to man up and play when he's less than 100%. And this did happen last year when Schrader literally flipped over, landed like he was doing a headstand, landed on his head, and before he went down. And this year, he actually, in the Purdue game, he ran at the end of the first half to the left side when he should have just thrown the ball out of bounds. Time was expiring, and he ran to try and get yards where you're not going to do anything with it. And he got hit and flipped, and he almost landed on his head again. And it was eerily reminiscent to last season in not a good way. So Tom said exactly the same scenario as last year. He gets hammered, tries to man up at play when he's less than 100%, and his performance suffers. Speaking of Schrader, since he's essentially the entire offense, or that everything else has to run through him, then that dictates how the team performs. However, even if he was 100%, we couldn't compete with these guys. I believe North Carolina is top 10, if not top 5. I believe they have a legitimate shot at the national championship. They're going to sneak up on the rest of the top teams because they're looked at as the lesser ACC. Just my thoughts. Good thoughts, Tom. I do think. Obviously, everything does run through Garrett, and that's reality. Mike R. said, when Duke is better than Syracuse, you have to start getting real. And he's talking about football, obviously, there. And then Dennis said the next game, which is Florida State, might be worse. Jerry F. said that this is a Division II team, essentially. Fred reminded us of soccer going on. Richard R. said, we can't win the ACC with our undersized, undemolished players. It's every week we're the smallest team and get mishandled physically. I would say that this team definitely has good athletes. I wouldn't be attacking the athletes. I think this team has good athletes, and they've proven that. They've made it to the NFL consistently over these last couple of years. So I don't know if I would be witch hunting the athletes here. There are teams that are better than this team, and North Carolina is one of those teams, and I knew that going in. Not that Syracuse doesn't go out there and fight, not that they don't go out there and try. There are some teams out there that have been better and are better currently. It's a tough thing to say when it's your hometown, but Syracuse was facing off against some of the top tiers here, and North Carolina is trying to rise up to the top tier there. I think Florida State's above them, but I think North Carolina's up there for sure in the ACC. Patty said, was at the game today. My husband said it's best on the drive home. I don't think I've ever been at a football game where it seemed like there was never a reason to cheer. I've been to some of those, Patty. It's not fun. Ernie M. said, our coach outplayed by superior team. Irene F. said they stink. JL said, should have never left the Big East. I agree with you, Jay. I agree, but there was no plan for football. Maybe there would have been if Syracuse had stayed. Jeff D. said, hopefully we do better in basketball. Brian M. said, fire the head coach. Alan I. said, can we discuss growth here? Growth now. Crystal A. said, tough schedule. We've had some unlucky calls, and being on the road against good teams for the whole month of October isn't going to help. Our players are playing their heart out, can't win them all. And I agree that the players are not going out there going, let's not play football. I don't see that in the players. I don't get that from my conversations and relationships with the guys that they're quitting in any way, shape, or form. Being on the road for the entire month of October, that's terrible scheduling. That's atrocious scheduling. You should not spend one of the 3 months that you play regular season football on the road. There's no team that should do that. Now I know LeMoyne, where we talk about LeMoyne all the time, being Division I, they've had to play the majority of their games and matches on the road because of their transition, but Syracuse is not transitioning to D1. They've been there forever, and you don't need to be playing the entire month of October on the road. It hurts your fan base. Even if you have a strong fan base, it's very debilitating to be like, hey, come and see us in September, then watch us on the road for an entire month, and then come and see us again in November, and then we're going to go to Yankee Stadium and take away one of your home games, and then we're going to come back at the end of the month. And and especially when you do it in the month of October, if this team struggles, right, and they come out of October 4-4, then your fans aren't going to show up, and they already weren't showing up. So that's an issue too, right? Home, away. You try to do the best you can, but to play an entire month on the road, that's awful. That's wrong. That should not happen to any team. Nobody should be playing a month on the road. They shouldn't be. So, DNF said we're a basketball school. I never like seeing that stuff. Neil W. said, reality is you can't consistently win without recruiting. Good coaching can make 3 stars into 4, but that's not happening. I like Babers, but maybe it's time for a change. Dan W. said, at least they beat Colgate. Dan N. had emojis of throwing up and not feeling great. Ben E. said, glad I went and saw St. Louis University men's hockey team get the W instead. Good for you. I appreciate that. So he's saying, hey, I spent my time watching a team win that you were rooting for. Thomas W. said, my mother always said, if you can't say anything good, don't say anything at all, so no comment. Michael S. said, this was more competitive and had a wrestling match. And then Mark W. said they were simply a more talented team. That's all there is to it. Tony L. said we need Deion Sanders. Chuck B. says that's a really good team, or SU's not really good. Brian F. said that it was nice of them to line up 4 cupcakes at the start of the season so we can all feel better about our team before the ACC slaughter began. ... Again. Okay. Lauren D. said 8 years of failure. Jerry S. said a whooping. Leo P. said we suck. Tommy L. had a GIF of one of the many roles that Rob Schneider played, and it says we suck again. David G. said I wish we could go back and have the same question asked after Game 4, and I responded to him that I believe I did ask people how they were feeling with the team earlier on. Matt R. said, I think we didn't show up on a primetime stage. I think after last year's easy scheduling, the national media ranked Cuse, and then we had that 6-game slide to finish the year. This year, they knew better, didn't rank us with similar scheduling with another fast start, and we have 3 prove-it games like the 3-4 game stretch we had last year. So far, 0-2. I didn't think we would win any of these 3 games, but thought we could go 8-4, 9-3 if we were an improved team. Clemson, we shot ourselves. We were still in it in the fourth quarter with a 2-score game until Schrader threw the interception yesterday. And I do think, and Schrader said this too, I think Syracuse beat themselves in the Clemson game more than Clemson beat them. He said in the North Carolina game, we didn't show up at all. We weren't ready to play. Got another chance with Florida State, but that hill is a larger climb. I agree. The remaining games are all winnable. It's just what team's going to show up. The Fairweather Cuse fans are saying season is over. That's far from the truth. Did they learn anything from last year? Guess we'll find out. For those that want Babers gone, it's not going to happen. The program momentum behind the scenes won't be jeopardized to start over. Next contract cycle will be a different story. We ain't going to find a better, more respected coach for what we are paying. Interesting comments. Randy H. said, the thing I wonder is, who are they going to get for a new head coach? Don't expect a big name to come to Syracuse. It's not a great job. Have to find the right up-and-coming coach and help you. Compare that with some good stuff from the portal. I can't see Syracuse ever being more than an 8-win team. We certainly aren't going to compete for national championships. If you don't mind that, back to the Donovan McNabb. If you don't mind, think back to the Donovan McNabb areas. The best those teams are rated was 8 or 9 wins. I mean, I wouldn't take that every year, but people talking about national championships, it's just funny to me. Yeah, I don't think Syracuse is going to be competing for national championships. Again, this is my hometown. I don't want to say that, but I believe that that's the truth. Randy H. said, I'd be fine if they go in a different direction. I just think we need to reconsider expectations for Syracuse football. The only way this would change my mind is if you could convince Deion Sanders to somehow come to Syracuse. I don't know why everybody wants Deion Sanders. I don't want to say everybody. I don't know why people are even mentioning Deion Sanders. You know, Deion's about Deion. Yeah, Colorado's winning. Okay, they're doing some things, but Deion is about Deion. Deion's like having a 5-star recruit coach your team, right? You get the good, but then you get all the flashy and all that other stuff. And it's not that I think Dion is not bringing good to Colorado. I just, how much can you hear somebody talk about themselves before you're like, okay, that's enough. I got it. I get you. Nielski said the only university to employ a coach for 8 years, 2 bowl appearances, 1 10 win season, losing record, 2 years. You start 10-0, usually a great start. Neil said, then following these winning ways, you have a record of 0-10. Thanks for coaching, Dino. Good luck on your next job. Pascal B said, I hope he is a good car salesman. Robert G said, you really want to know my thoughts? I'll tell you my thoughts. I'm going to not read that, but he said some stuff about Dino. That's all I got to say. For a new coach, how many times are we going to go undefeated? Get to Clemson, fall 2 games. Now we're going to follow our 3rd game against South Florida State is what he was saying there. And then hopefully we get back in track. But if we don't think it's time for Dino to pack and get out of Syracuse, Brittany R. said we better show up for Florida State. Unfortunately, I think we all know the outcome of that game. I have to be pessimist. I hate to be pessimistic, but same story every year. And the other comment we got was from Eric H. Dan, do you really want my thoughts? Well, let me start from the beginning. Back in 1964, when I was born, one of the first things in my room was a Syracuse pennant. You see, my parents were season ticket holders after moving from Pittsburgh. And seeing the Orange win a national championship in 1959, they loved the Orange and watched or listened until the day they both died. So I was raised as an Orange fan for my entire life. I am now close to turning 60 myself. I have invested so much of my life and money into Syracuse University without ever being a student. Yet I am sure I have supported and been affected more by SU athletics than 90% of the alumni, with the exception of a handful of legitimate chances to win a national championship by Coach Boeheim and his teams, only to be disappointed by the likes of Keith Smart and some other characters. Years of disappointment, especially with the football team and their constant losing. For such a storied program and the legends that have passed through our great city, it is a disgrace. Babers has to me, nothing but a joke. While he may be a nice guy, his record speaks for itself. He quits on his team year in, year out. I watch college football a lot. There is not one Division I program that would put up with this nonsense. I'll be honest with you, I don't know why anyone would play for Syracuse, with the exception of the McNabb and McPherson years. Syracuse football has sucked. So those are your thoughts. Like I said, y'all don't shy away from what you're thinking. I thank you for giving your thoughts. I know people are frustrated. I think the reality in the state of Syracuse football is, listen, I'm going to say this and I'm going to be clear about this. Do I respect the coaches? Yes. Do I respect the student athletes? Yes. Do I know they're working? Yeah, I believe they are. My concern and my frustration lies with the fact of this team is not improving. Right? Took almost 20 years to get up that hill. You get to 10-3 and you fall off the hill immediately. And you did that with Schaefer's recruits. And Schaefer didn't get any credit and Schaefer didn't get any time. I respect Dino and I appreciate my relationship with Dino. I respect Scott Schaefer and I appreciate my relationship with Scott Schaefer. Scott Schaefer was scrutinized and he had 3 years. Dino scrutinized and he has 8 years. Scott Schaefer had a tremendous coaching group that stayed together. They went down with the ship. They didn't run from the ship. They went down with the ship. When Scott got fired and everybody else got fired, they stayed with Scott till the bitter end. That doesn't happen with Dino. With Dino, it is here today, gone tomorrow. This guy's a coach. Now he's not the coach here. Coach is changing, every single year in his 8 years? If not, then 7 out of 8 years coaching changes. There's a couple, there's three, the Whitkey family and Mike Lynch. Besides that, everybody, and his special teams guy, and besides, not special teams guy, his assistant, and besides that, everybody else is gone. I mean, listen, Syracuse football is not building consistently. It's like a kid who you give a bunch of building blocks to, and every time he's about to build a wall in his house, he knocks it down. And then he gets the porch and he knocks it down. And then he puts the roof on and he knocks it down. Every time he has any type of thought that this could actually look like a house, he knocks it down. That's what it looks like to me. You know, when we look back on what this 7+ years has looked like, it's looked like a building blocks house that never gets built. It looks like a house that looks like it might get built. We feel like it might get built. We hope that it might get built. But every single time there's any type of building, there's a demolition. That's what Syracuse football has looked like to me. I respect the student athletes. I respect the coaches. I know they're working. I love talking with them. I love telling their stories. And at the same time, they are on a losing program that does not win consistently. Dino talks about being consistently good, not occasionally great. This team has only been consistently good in the last 7+ years. They've never been, they've only been occasionally great. They've never been consistently good. And I have been around other programs, been around high school programs, college programs, professional teams that find a way, right? I've covered the Jacksonville Jaguars for 13 years, majority of that on-site, on location. I've been in that locker room for over a decade. That team was bad. They were the worst team in the country 2 years in a row. They had the number 1 pick in back-to-back years. That's very atypical. Not a lot of franchises can say that. Yet, the best locker room that they had came a few years ago. Last year. The best locker room that I've ever seen them have was last year. And this year, I don't think they have a bad locker room, but I think they've had to come together more. But I've seen this team go through a decade of no postseason. And I've seen what they've done. You know, you got a good coach now. You got a good quarterback now. You got guys on your defense that are starting to look like that defense that was really, really good back in 2018, right? So you're starting to build up your defense again. You're drafting better because you're actually holding on to your draft picks defensively and some offensively. They've gotten rid of a bunch of receivers. You've made good trades. You've made good moves in the offseason. You've gotten depth on the offensive and defensive line. There's things that Jacksonville has done to give somebody hope. Syracuse has not done those things. They are not consistent. They are wildly inconsistent. And it's hard for a fan to get behind a team that, you know, you feel good about, and then you go, okay, but when they play good competition, this team's going to look totally different. And then they do, right? And then they do. And that's, you don't want to say that. I don't want to sit up here this morning and say a statement that is true this morning, which is Syracuse is not on the level of North Carolina. They're not on the level of North Carolina. I should not have to go into a game and say there is a 99% chance or a 90% chance, whatever, that this team's going to win. I shouldn't say that. I mean, essentially, I'm calling Syracuse the Denver Broncos or the Carolina Panthers in some of these games. I don't think there's any shot for Syracuse against Florida State. I don't. And this is my hometown. And again, I love the people on this team. But if you're asking me as an impartial broadcaster to tell you what I think and what I believe, there's no way Syracuse is going to compete against Florida State when they did not compete against North Carolina. And to show the divide, it's like, okay, if Florida State is the top team in the ACC, which I believe they are, and arguably North Carolina, Duke are, you know, I would say right now in this moment, Florida State's the best team in the ACC right now. North Carolina, Duke is up there. Louisville, we'll see when they are playing better competition, but they did defeat Notre Dame, which obviously holds a lot of weight with people. Syracuse, if there are levels, if there's 3 levels, Syracuse is level 3. Syracuse is at the bottom again. And that's reality. It's not what I want to say about my hometown, but it's the reality. Syracuse is one of the worst teams in the ACC. And a decade into the ACC, they still don't make sense. They still don't fit. And I still don't ever see a path for them to get to a national championship. I don't see a path for them 99.9% of the time of getting to an ACC championship. And I never thought that I would say that in the levels of football, Syracuse just isn't cutting it. I feel like my whole life Syracuse has been trying to get back. And now I feel like Syracuse is almost okay with mediocrity. It's almost okay to just make a bowl game. And to me, that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable to be 6-6. It's unacceptable to just want to be 7-5, want to be 8-4. If I went into a test wanting to get an 80, maybe I get an 80, or I get a 60 or a 70 or a 40. But I went into every test wanting to get 100. Sometimes I got 100. Sometimes I got a 90. Sometimes I got an 87. Sometimes I got a 97. Sometimes I got a 95. But you don't go in wanting to get an 80. And if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. And this Syracuse team is limited. And blaming it on the portal, no. Deion Sanders just put together, what, more than half of his team? Charlotte, looking better from last year, had to rebuild at least half of its team under Biff Poggi. And then you got my guy Golish down in South Florida. He had to fill half of his roster. And South Florida looks like a better team. They held Alabama under 20. They were in the game with Alabama all the way into the fourth quarter. So the state of Syracuse football is that mediocrity is ruling the day and excuses. Mediocrity and excuses. And that's unacceptable to me. You cannot be occasionally great. You got to be consistently good if you want to move forward. And Syracuse is not moving forward. They're not. So something needs to change. And there needs to be some type of vision. And it needs to come from the athletic director or the athletic director and the chancellor. And right now, there's been no plan. I've seen no plan. I don't envision that there's going to be a plan, but we'll see. You can walk with your eyes closed and get down the street. You could also fall into a manhole. I think Syracuse needs to open their eyes and start walking with a directed purpose, or manhole, here we come. With that being said, we'll take a step aside here on Wake Up Call. We'll get ready for hour 2 for fantasy football. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville Bees. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
It would be a pity if you don't shop at Honda City.
Our
corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A is to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that's entrusted to us and to positively influence all those who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And what became increasingly clear from our success in Cicero is that people love Chick-fil-A. And also I think we recognize that, we had a great opportunity to grow the brand and grow our platform. I felt incredibly grateful when I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A operator. I think what it's meant for me, what I've come to realize on a very deep level is that this is a calling for me. It's not a career, it's not a job. The Lord called me to be a Chick-fil-A operator and to use these restaurants to glorify Him and to positively influence other people. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Head to Chick-fil-A Clay on 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. As always on a Wednesday, we're going to jump into the fantasy football coverage here, Fantasy Football in Focus. So we're going to end this video and start a new one. So join us on Facebook.com and YouTube.com, both